Hey, I'm Tins.
I'm Nakis.
And you are listening to NintenHeadZ, a retro-themed podcast focused on playing and rating old Nintendo games. Nakis, man, we got a lot of stuff to cover today, so I think we should jump right into the Nintendo Direct that happened this morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you watched it.
I did.
I watched it as well. What were your initial thoughts on it?
What
overall take on it? Good, bad, mid?
Oh, I thought it was excellent. I at first I thought that them leading off with the Mario and Luigi installment, I was like, that's heavy.
A banger to start out
yeah,
with.
That's kind of like, what else is going to be involved? And then they just steadily kept blowing my mind with everything. I mean,
so in general, you thought it was pretty good.
I thought it was one of the better ones that they've put out.
Yeah, honestly. I think it was a really good one. I'm going to just name a few things from the Direct. You tell me what you want to talk about.
Okay.
So I got Mario and Luigi Brothership. We can talk more on that if you want. Fantasian Neo Dimension. They got Donkey Kong Country Remaster. No.
Returns.
I'm sorry. I got it abbreviated here. Donkey Kong Country Returns HD.
Yeah.
Which it is a remaster.
Was that the originally on the DS?
No, it was on the Wii U.
On the Wii, okay.
And then they remade it for the 3DS.
Okay.
And they called it Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D, which is actually that's the version I have played.
Yeah. I need to play those, honestly.
Yeah, all the Donkey Kong Country games, even the later ones are really good. They had Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake
and 1 and 2,
which is coming later.
Yeah. That I was super hyped to see that.
The two white whales we have, Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, and Metroid Prime 4 Beyond.
Yes.
You want to talk about those?
I am totally down. Yeah. I had heard some rumors of a new Zelda game with a protagonist of Zelda as opposed to Link.
Mm-hmm.
And, at first I was kind of skeptical on it, but the way that they delivered it and explained how, the new system is going to work, I'm actually really excited for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's going to be a cool little change of pace.
I can already see the internet just tearing it apart. Like, I don't know. I could see them comparing it to just other games like Minecraft or something because, you have looks like you got a wand and you can kind of summon things and kind of craft your way through the game and want for a better way to say
it's
that.
Definitely going to be an offshoot for the Zelda series, but I'm glad.
I think it still looks like it's going to retain that Zelda feel.
It is, sure. And I'm excited to see, are they going to bring dungeons back? Are they going to bring, boss enemies? Or is it going to play like, what am I trying to say?
Like a totally different game?
Like a totally different game,
Or is it going to kind of still keep some of that?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good, fair thing to point out. So Metroid Prime 4 Beyond.
Dude, I'm a fan of Metroid. I've played Super Metroid, played a little bit of Metroid 1, and I have played...
You're a big fan of the Game Boy Advance one. Is it Fusion?
Fusion. Yes, I've played Fusion, which is a sequel to Super Metroid.
Yeah.
I honestly have not played the GameCube, the Metroid Primes.
Yeah.
And I am upset with myself for not doing so. I just haven't had the means to do so.
I bought the remastered, the Metroid Prime remaster for the Switch, and I played it for a day or two, and then I put it down. But that's nothing to say. It's not to speak on anything ill on the game. It's a good game. I just, for a couple of reasons, I just don't think I was ready to sit down with it yet. I was coming off of another game, I believe.
Right.
I can't remember at this
point.
Dude, and here's the thing, though. Part of it is an attachment to Super Metroid. I messed up by playing that game first because I don't think I know this is unfair to just say, and maybe I'll eat my words one day. I don't think any other Metroid game is going to scratch my itch the way that one does. But
you haven't played Fusion yet.
I sound like I'm talking ill. I think the Prime series, the little bit I did play of it, plus what I already know about it, I know it's a great series. I just haven't had time to really get into it. So yeah, I mean, I thought it was all in all, I thought it was a great Nintendo Direct, which for the second half of the year, I mean, they've got to deliver pretty big.
All that to say, that we're supposedly coming up on the end of the Switch life cycle.
Oh, they added some mature audience, 64 titles, which the
Perfect Dark,
and what was the other one?
It was Turok, Dinosaur.
Turok, yeah. No, I'm actually really hyped for that. Which I'm hyped for that, but also I was already looking into maybe getting they have a remastered version that you can buy on Switch. I'll have to look into. I want to get into that series, so I'll have to definitely check out one or the other. So it was Father's Day weekend this weekend. I didn't get a chance to see my dad. He had some things going on, and we also, Nakis, had some things going on. You went to Bonnaroo this weekend, right?
I did. It was epic.
That's fun.
It was awesome, as usual. This was my 9th, I believe. I've lost count because they canceled a couple of them. Started going in 2013, and it's 2024, so it should be my 10th? 11th. So, yeah, they canceled 2.
Gotcha.
So,
and you've been every other year since? And either for the full weekend or the day. You did a day pass this weekend.
Yeah, I did do just the one day, yeah.
So you saw, who'd you see?
Saw Cage the Elephant, Red Hot Chili Peppers, which we got, front row for that, and it was amazing.
Nice.
And then I saw Diplo and a little bit of Pretty Lights to close out the night. It was a long day.
I've heard of those latter two, but I don't know much about it.
You heard of Major Lazer?
I've heard of Major Lazer.
They had a cartoon show on Adult Swim. That's Diplo was one of the 2 members of Major Lazer.
Oh,
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. I remember Major Lazer was there the year that I went with you guys.
Yeah, and
so
we saw
some of these artists I think Pretty Lights may have been, maybe not. I went to a festival this weekend as well. We saw Chappell Roan, and I'm calling it on this podcast now. She's going to be the next Lady Gaga.
Okay,
I'm calling it now.
I don't know much about her. I've heard Jess talk about her, and I know that she was at Bonnaroo on Sunday, the day after you saw her in Louisville, and she and you actually told me this, but she made history at Bonnaroo for being the first person to actually get switched from a smaller stage to one of the main stages just due to audience alone.
Yeah, she. When I say she blew up overnight, like, man, she's selling out like Taylor Swift, man. I mean, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
She got some bangers, man. It's not typically the type of music I go for, but my wife's real into them. We had fun, man, and her music has been stuck in my head the last couple of days. But
heck yeah.
So yeah, we kind of glossed over the fact that it's Father's Day. I want to start doing something. At the beginning of every episode to kind of round off or, wrap up the previous episode. So I've gathered a few jokes for the previous episode, but I went the extra mile and I got a few Shadow Man jokes as well. So, Nakis, what currency is used in Dead Side?
I have no idea.
Cado.
That's funny.
You could say, you could almost call it bread side.
Oh my god.
I know, it's so bad. This one's not quite as great as that one, unfortunately. But what is Shadow Man's favorite Pokemon? Teddy Ursa.
Okay.
Because the teddy bear.
Okay.
Get it? The teddy. Okay. So moving on from that, I got a couple Hamtaro ones. What is the Ham's favorite place to go hiking?
No idea.
Mount Kilihamtaro.
That's awful. Kill a Hamtaro.
Yeah, it is awful. The joke and the idea. Oh, it's good. And moving on. Hamtaro's favorite sandwich.
Ham.
That's a good one. Peanut butter and ham jam.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now that all of our listeners are gone, let's go ahead and we'll do the question of the week, Nakis, and then we'll jump into the game of the week. So, question of the week is Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
Oh, you know my answer on this.
I think it's Harry Potter, right?
Yeah. I
feel like you've went back and forth on Lord of the Rings over the years.
Dude, I'll start with this. I wanted to get into Lord of the Rings. I had my grandmother buy me, and I don't know where this book is, but it's a book that has all 3, books of the Lord of the Rings in one book, and The Hobbit.
It's an omnibus.
Yeah, I owned that at one point, and I had full intentions on like, diving into it, but dude, I just, as a kid, I could not.
Yeah, I understand.
It just was one of those that I could never get into. And I've watched the movies, I would say twice a piece, in my lifetime, which is probably not nearly enough, but I just can't. And I'm sorry, it's just not for me. I can't get into it. Star Wars, Harry Potter. I love Harry Potter, dude.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the, we have many, many reasons why me and you are best friends, but I feel like that's one that we have bonded over through the years.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, yeah, I also choose Harry Potter over Lord of the Rings. Now, it's just something, Harry Potter was just more, I was probably the perfect age audience to kind of jump on board.
And grow up with that series.
Man, Hogwarts was just like, it was such every kid that was into Harry Potter, like everyone wanted to go to Hogwarts, man. It was just so cool. The Shire was cool, but like I wasn't dreaming about going to the Shire. I wanted my letter to Hogwarts.
Absolutely.
Now, my attention span wasn't the greatest growing up.
Mine still isn't.
Mine still isn't. Lord of the Rings, for some reason, maybe I was just, I don't know. It just didn't scratch my itch like other series, and maybe they're unfair to compare, but I know they are often compared, and so yeah, Harry Potter was just it still is to this day. Now, a few years back, my wife and I sat down and watched all the Hobbit movies, all the Lord of the Rings movies, and for whatever reason, I thought that they were harder to follow when I was a kid.
For sure.
But they weren't at all.
They're just kind of straightforward.
They're very straightforward.
Yeah.
It's very, very straightforward. I don't know why. And I can think of a few other series I probably my attention span, but that's the thing is I wasn't paying attention. If I was, I would have been like, oh wait, this is great, whatever.
So this week we played Advance Wars. It's a turn-based strategy game that came out on the Game Boy Advance September 10th of 2001. It is actually the 7th title of the Wars series. So they had a lot of Japanese exclusive games that they released. They released Famicom Wars and Super Famicom Wars. This was the first title in America and also on the Game Boy Advance. It paved the way for Fire Emblem in the fact that Fire Emblem was originally only released in Japan as well. And then Nintendo North America played the game and were like, this is a great game. Why don't we produce it here in America?
Right.
And that's how that game came to be over here.
So let's jump into the story here. So you got your fictional world. It's I don't know if it actually has a name, but it's like you've got this overhead kind of. It looks like a world map. What's going on is there's basically a world war between these 4 different armies. So you've got the Orange Star Army, the Blue Moon Army, the Yellow Comet Army, and the Green Earth Army. Technically, there's a 5th one. We'll get to that one here in a second. And you've got all these characters. So like the Orange Star Army, you've got the COs or the commanding officers. You've got Andy, Max, and Sammy, and you've got the de facto leader named Nell, and we'll kind of talk about her here in a second. And she kind of appoints you as the tactical advisor. So there's a war going on between these 4 armies, and so I started with the tutorial, which is I said in the previous episode I've never ever played it's got it listed as a turn-based strategy game. So you're kind of thrown in if you start with the tutorial, which of course I did, and the campaign actually kind of continues on from the tutorial. So okay, you are a part of the Orange Star Army. That's the army that you are the tactical advisor for, and you're kind of working under the COs. And Andy's kind of like, I consider him my right-hand man. He's like this. He's a kid, by the way. There's like kids that are commanding these armies, and it's real tongue-in-cheek, kind of almost anime-esque or cartoony. But anyway, so Andy is pretty much your buddy that goes to war with you, and or he's one of them. And so the story kind of unfolds later as Andy was accused of attacking Green Earth And so Green Earth, it's kind of a mess, but, essentially a world war ensues. Later you find out, so there is a black hole army. They use a doppelganger of Andy who is pretending to be Andy, and so he's like attacking certain nations. Somebody's behind all this, stirring the pot.
Yeah, I guess I did not make it that far.
That's pretty much the story. It's a world war. I mean, what else can you say except it's kind of very tongue in cheek and just satirical kind of. Some of the banter. I mean, there's some spicy drama going on. Some of the people like in the Blue Moon Army used to be in the Orange Star Army, and there's some traitors in there, and it's a lot of fun. Let's talk about the modes, Nakis. There was the field training, which is the tutorial.
Right.
So did you want to touch up on the?
So
because we landed in the same place.
Yeah.
Here. Yeah, for sure.
So you were saying that you started with the tutorial, which I feel like essentially you kind of have to in order to actually unlock the campaign. Mm-hmm. You have to get to I think the last mission, which you can skip to the last mission and just play it,
which is good.
Yeah, that's
because I might not have made it to the campaign.
Right.
Yeah.
But I did play all of the campaign stories, and then except for that one that you showed me that it actually unlocks another field training, or whatever,
and like another training or tutorial level,
unlocks, and I didn't play that, so I don't know if it actually unlocks another one after that or whatever. I don't know how.
I can't even remember what it entailed.
I didn't even go back to it after the campaign opened, and I will say that I was so intrigued by the campaign that that's about as far as I went. I didn't explore the other
the other modes.
The other modes, if you want to get into those.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I wanted to also kind of just add to the field training, or to agree with you at least on the field training. And listeners, this game starts off pretty like I say it starts off hard. It doesn't start off immediately hard. Like the first 3 or 4 levels, of training, it's very, very straightforward. And then the moment they introduce a tank in the tutorial, man, I was having problems. It's like legitimately, if you don't either make the correct decisions from the jump, or B, really just figure out where to almost perfectly strategically place your units, you're going to have a hard time.
Yeah, I want to go ahead. I want to touch on that, but
yeah, I mean, like, and I'll kind of loop back around to this later. I think with the balance, the AI is just like kind of insane in this game.
It is. It is.
So without giving away too much, but you've got other modes. You've got the war room, which is like in campaign you can unlock coins depending on how well you do, and you can buy maps for this other mode, which is war room, which is basically just one-on-one, like you
is
pick
that the
a map.
one where you like create your own?
If there was a create your own, I didn't make it that far. I think maybe there was a
there is a
map. That's pretty daggone cool actually. Yeah. No, it was like you just choose a different map setup. Okay, and then you got I think you pick your team. You start with no units, and you start with from ground zero. Whereas like in the
like you have a certain amount of money to buy your units.
Starts you off with I think $10,000 or whatever, which is I think that's my favorite mode. I mean, campaign was great. That it's kind of tied with campaign, just because it was cool to just kind of start a fresh slate and just go from there. I got some money. How do I want to start this off? And then instead of them,
it's a little more fair.
Well, okay, so going back to the tutorial, there is you get to a point where there's a level where they're like, okay, you have 2 tanks and the enemy has 10.
Yeah.
And dude, they bum rush you fast.
Sorry that we're going back to the tutorial, but this plays through the entire game like this. So, touching back on the strategy aspect, you can move your tank to where that the enemy can't hit you right off. And the way that plays out is you can actually highlight an enemy unit and see its attack range. So you hit the B button, for example, and it will show you in I think it's in red, or their attack range is like the squares are marked in red or whatever.
You can kind of check how far they can attack and how far they can move, which is very helpful.
And so if you don't utilize that, you're not going to make it very far in this game, because that is like, you have to use that to your advantage. There's also weather elements. So there's like, rain and fog and stuff like that affect your terrain movement. It affects, how far you can attack and certain things like that. Mm-hmm. There's just a lot that goes into the strategy that you choose in this game, and it's really cool, and it's a lot of fun to figure it out as you go.
I spent the first 5 days on the tutorial, and finally I was like, I'm going to jump to the last one and see if, I went straight to the last one, had no issue with it, and then it unlocked campaign mode. So luckily, you don't have to do them all. You can just jump straight to the end, which, I mean, once I figured out what I was doing, I just wanted to play the games kind of the way that I wanted to, instead of having a very particular setup. Right. So once you got to the campaign, it really became a fun game. So you kind of touched upon it. I want to explain to the listeners kind of exactly how the gameplay works. So you've got your overhead top-down view of this like grid-based terrain or map. You command your, like we've kind of mentioned, you command your different warring units. You've got infantry, tanks, helicopters, subs. You got ships and planes, but then you have like sub-categories of those.
Right.
You've got T-copters and B-copters, which is respectively transport copters and battle copters. Yeah. So you've got, there's a lot going on here. Which the transport copters, which there's also these things called APCs. They will move, so you've got your regular infantry units that can only move like 2 or 3 or maybe 4 steps. You put them in one of these transport vehicles, and you can send them across the map pretty much and get places faster.
And there are ships that do that too for.
Well, you can land.
The ships actually came in handy a lot more than like even the helicopters did for me.
Yeah. You can land like I think you can land helicopters on the ship, or so, there's bigger units that you can land on the ship. Yeah. It's really cool in that aspect.
You can pick up tanks, I think, with one of the helicopters, I believe, or something. Or no, it's the ship.
I think it is the ship. Yeah, it can hold tanks and more than just the infantry units, is what we're saying. So you've got this overhead. It's a grid, and so during your turn you are micromanaging all your units, and depending on the unit, it can move a certain. Like tanks can move far, whereas regular infantry or mechs can only move a few spaces. Mm-hmm. And then you have some units attack directly, and then you got some that attacked indirectly. So you've got like missiles and rockets and stuff that are like long range weapons. It's really cool, and gets kind of in depth. And again, you can check both your own and the enemy's units to kind of help you strategize where you're gonna like move. If you move one spot too close, well, now you're in range, and they can.
I'll say this:
attack you on their next turn.
So, like with the rockets and like the indirect combat units, I had a hard time at first with understanding when you highlight to see where your attack range is. Like even in a tank, tanks are direct attack units. Mm-hmm. It'll show you a broad range where they can attack, but that means that you can move and attack in that range. It doesn't mean that you can attack from 5 squares away.
Right.
It just means that you can move up to that certain square and attack it.
I thought you were going to say you had a hard time, like the long range units and stuff, like the artillery versus the rockets versus.
Definitely that.
Look, man,
definitely.
I had a hard time. I was making it harder than it needed to be, because I should have been. So, listeners, you can press R. You can press the R button on any of these units, and you'll get like a detailed description of like everything about that unit, like what it is, kind of what it attacks, and its defense, and all this. So yeah, I was making it maybe harder than it needed to be, because I couldn't. It's a Game Boy Advance. It's slightly limited in how it displays the description. So it's like it'll like you bring one up and it'll say like copters and tanks. I'm just making something up, but like It's like,
That
okay,
means
does that mean is it strong against them or is it weak?
It can only attack those.
Yeah, pretty much it can only attack those. But I had a hard time at first figuring out because some of these units look very similar or the same. But which, by the way, so the way let's explain the way the attacking works. So say I've got a tank. You move your unit. If you're adjacent to an attackable unit.
So if you're attacking, you pull each turn starts with a movement for each unit that you have. You can choose to move them or stay put and wait. You can choose after you move to attack. If you're already beside an attackable opposing unit, you can attack, but you cannot move after you attack.
Or if you are, say one of their units are in range of your long range attacks, you can, which a lot of times I just like to leave those put and wait for something to come up to. You can just hit attack. If something's in range, it'll let you choose to attack. But what I want to address is it'll go into this little almost cutscene.
Yes.
Where it's showing these units kind of, it's like a 5 or 10 second little cutscene of the units going to war with each other. So you got these little cartoon men with their guns and their helmets and everything, and they're shooting at a tank or whatever. And then, every unit has, starts with 10, an HP, if you will.
Yeah.
HP, and it's also kind of, your attack is scaled with the difference in HP.
Yes.
Of yours versus your opponent.
Yes.
So the higher your HP and the lower theirs is, you're going to have a better time. We'll just say that.
And I will say this. So one cool thing is it gives advantage to the attacker in a certain aspect of, like, if you bring up a full, if I'm using, say, Tens, you and I are fighting each other, I bring a medium tank up to your full HP medium tank, and I'm at full HP. I attack you. I'm going to take you down to 6, and you might take me down to 9 or 8 because I initiated the attack.
Right. Well, and then it depends on the units going up. There isn't a strength and weakness thing here, and some units can only attack, like we've said earlier, can only attack certain other units, and then sometimes it might be able to attack a certain unit, but there's a strength and weakness thing. If you're a regular infantry unit going up against a tank, okay, I might have 10 on my infantry, and I might even attack first, but I'm not going to do jack.
Right.
Attack,
like I was saying, obviously, a group of people walking around with guns up against a giant tank.
Yeah, I mean,
it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, there are terrain advantages to that as well. Like if you're up in the mountains and you have if you have the high ground, that's one basic example of the terrain advantages. There's also like forests and stuff that you can hide in that help protect you a little bit.
Raise your defense a little bit, yeah.
But you can also... So what I'm getting with that is if you attack from the high ground on a tank, on a small tank, you might take out 1 or 2 of them with just an infantry unit. Whereas if you're on the ground, they're most likely going to take your HP down and you're not going to do anything to them.
Mm-hmm. Obviously we've explained kind of how the gameplay works, but to actually win a battle or a map, there's multiple ways you can capture. We didn't even get into capturing bases and stuff. So your regular infantry units can capture cities, bases, even airports and regular ports
and
for ships.
That's how you gain money for the next turn.
Yes.
You have to capture.
The more cities you have captured, the more money you're going to rack up.
That being said, you have to have a unit on those cities to collect that money. You can capture those cities, but if like one of your infantries or a tank or something is not on it, you're not going to generate as much money.
You still generate money.
I think you do, but you don't generate as much.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's... Which, speaking to strategy, that is you've got to get your regular units to these cities as fast as possible. So the way it works is, say it's your turn, you click on your infantry unit, you move him 3 spaces onto the grid space that has a city, you click A, capture, and it generally, pretty much everything takes
It depends on your HP.
It's relative to your HP. If you've got full HP at 10, okay, so it takes 20 to capture the city. So you hit A, and a little animation appears of him like stomping down a building, and then the second time, so you got full HP again. It's your turn again. You stomp it down the second time. That's your full 20. Okay, now it raises up as
you've captured
as you've captured it, but it's now in your color, which is
right.
usually generally red.
Now, so for instance, if you have half HP and you're only at 5, it's only going to take that 20 down 5 every turn.
Correct.
And if you do anything, if you move off of that city during your time capturing it, you have to recapture the city.
Yes.
One more thing about cities and bases and stuff, it is the only way that I found to increase your HP, to gain health again. You have to move your tank or whatever. I keep saying tank. You got to move your unit that you have.
It depends, but for the most part, like tanks and most like ground units, you put in a city and it will generate HP.
A couple each turn.
I think planes and helicopters generate at HP at airports.
Okay.
And then I think that's the same with ships at regular ports.
Yeah.
So going back to how to conquer a map or win around, you can capture all the cities, including the neutral ones, because there are gray neutral ones. You capture all of those and the enemy bases, and that would win you around. That's a very difficult.
I didn't know. I think you can just capture the base. You don't have to capture all the cities. You can just go straight to their base.
I'm saying that's one way to win, though. If you capture all the cities...
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
I had no idea about that.
Because
I never tried.
It's one of those that's like, if you just happen to get them along the way, because it's hard to go straight to
I would say that's probably the hardest way to win, is capturing all the cities.
I did it a couple times.
Did you?
Because once you dwindle them down to like 2 units and you got 15, which is, didn't happen often, but, I did have a few successful rounds.
You can also take out their entire... squad, their entire army.
So the 3 ways to pretty much win is you can take out all their units, you can capture all the cities, bases, and ports. It might just be cities there. Or you can take out their headquarters, which each round you go in, you've got your main headquarters base, and that is the main thing you're mostly trying to protect, because if they take that down...
It's an instant over.
And it's got the same amount, it takes 20 to
capture anything.
To capture pretty much anything, yeah. We did talk about there's terrain, there's roads, you've got plains, mountains, bases, cities, airports. We've kind of talked about those, but like we said, depending on where you're standing, it's going to affect your movement. It's going to affect your defense, your attack. So mountains are good. For your infantries and your mechs,
it's the high ground.
It's the high ground.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, everybody's seen Star Wars. So there was also Nakis. We kind of talked about it the other day about the fog of war.
Yeah, that was a pain.
I didn't like that.
It's a pain.
It's a cool thing to add, but it just took an already pretty difficult AI-oriented game and made it even harder. So, you want to tell them about fog of war?
So, yeah, Fog of War. It is the most, to me, it was the most difficult concept to grasp on the game. Basically, each one of your units has a field of view. So, picture the entire map surrounded by fog. You cannot see any enemy unit unless they are in your field of view. So, and each one is different. You have these recon units that can see in the distance. Their attack power is kind of weak, but they are good for, scouting enemies and attacking the indirect units, because the indirect units, if you get right up on them, they can't attack you at what we call in D&D melee range. Like if you're in melee range, they can't
direct attack. Yeah.
But like I say, they're not the strongest units, but they help you dwindle down those indirect units, because they can move far and they can see far.
Yeah, I didn't use those often, but if there was a level with the fog, I would try to use those.
Those are
what
like
were they called? The
recon
units. Yeah.
And so
it was a trade-off.
So that being said, I honestly, and I could be totally wrong on this, but it felt like the AI had an advantage in the fog, because it seems like, if you're close enough, they can just fly right up to you.
Yeah, you can't see them, but they can seemingly see you, no problem.
Now, we don't know. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's just because I will just happen to be in their line of view. But at that point, and I'm sure we'll talk about the CO powers later and the advantages of all that, there are certain... So the COs, the commanding officers, each time you fight an army, it'll have its own, obviously commanding officer, and they have their own special abilities.
Touch up on that.
So each CO, including yourself, has a power. So you start with Andy. There's a meter that builds up over the course of maybe 5 or 10 turns, and when it's full, you can unleash your CO power. Andy's CO power is refilling HP. It's called super
hyper repair.
Hyper repair.
Yeah.
And so that's cool.
It all your units, when you use his power, they gain 2 HP.
And I think there's also like smaller bonuses that come with it. I think you can move, or your attack is stronger that round or
his
something.
His other little perk, I never did actually figure out his other perk.
And so each CO, and you get a total of like 3 or 4 on the Orange Star Army, but each person has their own perk. So Max is good. Max is good with tanks, and he
maximizes his strength really to like 150%.
So when his perk comes around, you can move farther with your tanks and attack better with them. Sammy is good with infantry units, so she can move extra, and what you were telling me, she has another...
I liked Sammy a lot because...
she can conquer
faster. Yeah. So instead of only conquering 10 HP at a time, if you've got full 10 HP, you're actually doing like 15.
Yeah. So, and that's not even part of the power. That's just her perk, right?
Right, yeah. That's just a perk that is like... It's activated at all times.
Yeah.
But her special power... which that was why I chose her every time. I didn't choose her for her actual power.
Yeah.
I liked her little perk. Her power was, I think, units can move like not twice as far, but like they can move further during that round. It definitely helps to have Sammy to be able to capture the cities faster.
Now, when she uses her CO power, did you ever notice her, like your infantry, being able to take it down in one round? Was that a thing? Or did you ever try to capture during the CO power?
That's a good question.
Because I didn't use Sammy enough to know.
But once I unlocked her, I was like, I can capture faster. I'm pretty much going to use her. I did use others as well, but I used her quite a bit.
I used Max a lot. Andy, once you had others, I didn't really find myself using Andy.
I went back to Andy a couple times because I did. Sometimes you would try...
I feel like
try a certain strategy, and then you lose 3 or 4 times after putting multiple hours. I mean, these battles, guys, are lasting like some of them are kind of quick, and some are lasting. Not because I had one battle that I swear it lasted 4 or 5 hours, and it felt so good to finally push through.
Dude,
oh man,
I got stuck on one, and we'll go into that when we do like what we liked and didn't like about the game.
Okay,
because I want to. It's kind of full circle for me.
So let's move forward here. So did you have a favorite character?
A favorite character? Honestly,
like design or just strategy.
I liked Nell and the yellow or the little like hipster looking dude with the goatee. I forget his name.
Yeah, I know. I thought he was on the green.
It might be.
Maybe.
Yeah. I can't remember, dude. There's so many different colors and stuff that it's hard to keep up. But
I think his name was Grit.
Yes.
Grit. He was
I liked their little like
side story,
romance or whatever the hell they had.
They almost seemed like maybe they had a thing going before and then he betrayed.
But I did all in all, I liked all the characters, man, because I like the fact that you have diversity and you can, in certain situations where you would normally just be thrown in with Andy, you have the option to go in with a tank, and ultimately. You have to figure out, like, what is the best way to attack this, because it might not be what you thought it was off the rip, And,
yeah, exactly. What was your favorite
battle?
No. You mean in the campaign?
or just in general. I
Because
really
there were a few that kind of stood out. Like you had to. There was one where it threw you in, like nowhere near your headquarters, and you had to hurry, to get to your headquarters, which was across the map, close to all their units.
Well, so it's either that one or the one where your base is in the middle, and they're already like pretty much on it, but you're way over on the.
I think we're talking about the same one.
So yeah, dude, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. That one took me probably 5 times to figure out, and
same.
And I had to look it up. I did have to look it up because I was stumped because you only have 3 or 4 turns maximum before they get to your base and start conquering it. Yep. And then after that, you have one final move, and then your base is taken.
That's what it was, is you had to last 5 turns.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they did have... I liked that. I liked that it wasn't always just take out all the units. It was like different things.
I liked that because you had to devise a different way of thinking about, okay, so up to this point, it's just been capture bases, take out units, yada, yada, yada. It's not been, rush to your base and protect it. And that was a whole different thing that you didn't even think about up to that point. And it just, as frustrating and aggravating as it was to redo that mission, I think I played it probably 5 or 6 times before I was just
figured out how to get there fast enough.
Yeah, and so...
That was my problem. It's like, I never had an issue understanding the concept. It's just... How do I get my units over there fast enough? This is crazy.
Because they had it set up where some of their units were past your headquarters and almost to your side of the map. And so, you only had, the left column of the map to even position your units from getting attacked by the artillery or the missiles.
Yeah. Very strategically placed enemies at times. Kind of ridiculously.
Yeah. And so that honestly was probably my favorite one because you learned so much from that
one battle. Yeah.
Like you learned that artillery can't shoot over mountains for whatever reason, but missiles can. You know what I mean? So
I guess I didn't think about that.
It was just like
artillery. I had a love-hate relationship with artillery. It was good for certain ones, but maybe it just goes back to the AI. They really knew where to position themselves. Where I would have seemingly every spot covered in an area, and which I should have used my little helper more. That would show me. I didn't use it enough. Where you can kind of see how far they can attack and stuff. But man, I'd be like, oh, there's no way they're getting through here. And then they would they would position themselves in a spot where I'm like, it's somehow unmarked, and I'm like, how is that even how?
I got a question for you. Did you have a favorite unit?
That was literally what I was about to ask you.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I found myself buying. So starting off, I would try to just kind of load up on regular infantry and maybe something strong like a tank or something, a small, medium tank. But once I had some dough rolling, I would tend to go straight to buying medium tanks and rockets. Okay. Those were my two, because rockets have such good range and a good attack, and it would just kind of keep them at bay. But yeah, it seemed like they were the 2 most expensive units. And not getting into the ships, which we haven't even got into the ships and the planes and stuff.
Ironically, and I know that you have a love-hate thing with the water, those subs and battleships were my 2 favorite. Cool, yeah. Those were my 2 favorite units.
You want to tell them about the subs?
Yeah. So starting off, there's only, I would say for each, terrain vehicle, there are, maybe 5 to 7 units of each, which, ground units, there's definitely a lot more. I think air units, there's 4. There's a bomber airplane, there's an attack airplane, B-copters and T-copters that we went over. And then for the naval units, there are a battleship, a submarine, a loader, which is it's like the ABC. It's a transporter.
And you can transport
you can transport vehicles.
And, vehicles and people across the water. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So battleships, and in particular, are my favorite unit because their attack range is so crazy, and the only other things that can hit them are submarines and other battleships.
That's cool that's your favorite. Like, I didn't get heavy into
The naval
units.
Yeah.
But my favorite of those was definitely, I think, the battleship. The sub was cool because of what it could do, which...
Just like you would think in real life, a submarine could submerge itself, in which if you submerge yourself on this game, you're virtually indestructible except for another submarine that finds you.
Well...
They have to actually pull up next to you and find you on the map.
Yes, so, okay. So to kind of explain, you've got a sub, you can either move spaces just like any other unit, you can attack, but it has another option to dive. But you use more, we haven't even talked about, units have gas, so they can run out of gas. Now the subs use 5 times the amount of gas when they're submerged.
I forgot about that.
So that's the trade-off there is, yeah, you're under the water, the enemies can't see where you're at, but for one, every time I did that, they would still find me somehow. I don't, like we were saying earlier, it's like, does the AI have the advantage there because they just know where you're at, or are they just, is it randomizing it and they're getting lucky?
I think as far as the submarines go, I think it was a luck factor because that was one of the benefits to submerging yourself is you're undetectable unless you get stumbled upon.
Yeah.
So
the subs were cool, but I liked the battleships because, like you said, the range was crazy. You could just stick it out in the middle of the ocean and just kind of let it.
I think they can attack more units than any other thing because they can attack land. They can attack anything on the land.
True.
They can attack. I want to say they can attack air units, but I don't think I ever had a battle with naval and air units combined. I can't remember.
Yeah. There's so many different possibility
but,
matchups, I think. Let's talk about, how did you feel about the graphics?
Love them. I'm sure, I know that the people listening have probably, heard of this game before. It's a popular title.
Yeah.
There was a remake for it on the Nintendo Switch.
This is true.
The 1 and 2 remasters, reboots, whatever it's actually called. I haven't played those, but I have seen some footage of people playing them. I'll be honest with you, I will 100% always play the originals just because of the graphics.
Really?
So yeah, I mean, I know that's something we might have touched on later, but talking about graphics, that was one of my gripes.
So you prefer the old pixel. What does the new one look like? Just that kind of
cartoon, more of kind of
what the Switch does nowadays. It's
kind of like the pixel remasters for Final Fantasy. I mean, it's like
so it does have like a pixel kind of aspect.
Not really. No. Okay. It's honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, the map, like the grid map and everything, is actually kind of 3D-esque, like the Link to the or Link's Awakening,
right? Okay.
Like claymation, however you want to.
Gotcha.
And then the like the menu where you're having the dialogue between Nell and the big Brutus dude. I forget his name. Olaf. Yeah, that's an example. But like those were too like cartoony for me. I'm stuck in the 90s, bro. I'm stuck in the 8-bit pixel life.
That's part of being a 90s kid.
Yeah, like I'm just...
Yeah. I kind of agree. I actually just looked it up. I don't think I would have an issue playing the reboot, but I agree, being a SNES dude, that's my console, I have a lot of appreciation for
pixel art
in general, and just pixel graphics. And yeah, so I thought the graphics were great. Especially, I thought something that they did was really cool when it would go into these animations of the different warring units. I just thought it looked really good for a GBA game. Like, they did really good. And then something that just a little nuanced touch that they added that they did not have to do. Say you got a medium tank on your team, which your army, it was the Orange Star Army. Okay, say you go up to the same unit of an opposing team. I keep saying team.
They look teams. A little bit different.
They're slightly, there's variations. Even though they're medium tanks, like yours look a little different than their medium tanks. And this goes for all the units. And I just thought that was a really cool touch. Like, they could have just copy and pasted the same thing.
Right.
And, change the color or whatever.
I noticed that as well. I will say this. It confused me a little bit when...
At first, yeah. I'm like, is that the same unit?
Right, yeah, because, especially, I guess, the artillery units, because each different color... Yeah. Army has a different looking unit.
Right.
I know we said unit 1,000 times in this.
That's okay.
I mean, that's really literally what it is.
That's what it is. Yeah. And man, I don't know anything. I'm not like a war guy or a gun guy. So like, starting off, it was like these all look the same to me. I'm like I was a little overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And then it, like you were saying, it almost confused me a little bit. That they had changed not the animation, but the art style of it or the design of it. But once I figured it out, that was something I really could appreciate. I'm like, that's pretty cool. Like, before we get into our scoring, the last thing I want to ask about was the music.
So for those of you that don't know, Apple has released Delta, like officially on their App Store, which Delta is an all-in-one emulator. I think it goes all the way up to like PS2 or something.
Oh, that's
like
legit,
that.
Actually.
It might go farther than that. I haven't experimented with it a whole lot. Now I'll say this: I used to have Delta before it was an actual like native iPhone app. You could get it on. I paid $20 a year for this subscription. It was called Sinulus, and it was basically like jailbreaking your phone without hacking it. You could just download third-party apps, but you had to have like a license for them or whatever. So that's what the $20 was for. But basically, earlier this year, iPhone, even iPad, I have it on there now. Mm-hmm. The App Store in general has the native Delta emulator app on it, which is like, it runs games flawlessly. That being said, if I would get a phone call in the middle of me playing, or if I sometimes like the volume just would randomly cut off and I'd have to like either restart the app to get the sound back or whatever. The amount of time that I played, I didn't really listen to the music a lot. And dude, I'm always all Nintendo published titles. Mm-hmm. I feel like have excellent sound.
They've got that extra love kind of.
I mean, dude, it was published by Nintendo. It has a bomb soundtrack.
Yeah,
I mean, for what it was worth, it fits the style of the battles. It fits everything really well.
It's got a bouncy, cartoony feel, but also kind of like a rock and roll kind of feel. So it's right. It fits the tone of the game very well in that it is balanced between kind of kiddie and warlike. Yeah. So when I first booted it up, and you've got that main theme.
Yeah.
I booted it up and I just let it play for like 5 or 10 minutes. I was dancing in my kitchen, dude. I'm not kidding. Like, I was like, this is a banger, bro. Yeah. Like it just, I had never heard a track quite like it. And then, you get into the game and just the sound effects and music all just they kind of follow that tone throughout the game. So it's time to score our game of the week, Nakis. I want to explain to the listeners, we're going to kind of change it. The first couple episodes we were just trying it out. We were saying, hey, let's rate this game for its own time period, and then let's give a rating for today. Now, here's what I think we should really do. I think we should give it 1 rating apiece for how does it hold up today? How much fun did I have playing it this last week, or in this case, the last 2 weeks? We're going to rate this game, and depending on where it falls, it's going to earn a tier. We've got unplayable, trash, bad, mid, good, great, god tier, and perfect. I won't go over all of them, but, so you've got, if it gets anything from a 1 to a 1.9, that's unplayable. And then you've got, if it lands from an 8 to a 9, that's a great game. And then we've got God tier, and then we've got perfect at 10. So, that being said, why don't we give this game a rating? Nakis, I'll let you go first, man.
So, for today, this is just because I love this genre of game. I'm going to give this a 9.5, dude.
Oh, dang.
I really, I am still currently playing through it. I have, like I said, the reason I chose this game is
9.5,
dude.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I really am a fan.
Okay.
Like I'm
not doubting. I'm not knocking it. Go ahead.
And I say that when this game kind of pisses me off in every sense of the word. Like, I said I played through that one level like 5 or 6 times. There's been ones where I've played 7 or 8, and they are ones where you're putting in work.
Oh, yeah.
At least almost an hour's worth of work.
For sure.
Just to fail. or just to come, so close to beating it and then have to redo it. And it pisses me off so bad, excuse my language, but I find myself immediately jumping back into it, finding the right, correcting stuff that I made mistakes on that first time around, and it's so addicting to me. Maybe 9.5 is a stretch, but I think that's
how you feel. That's how you feel, man.
I think that's where I'm at with it.
Okay. What would you change about it?
What would I change about it? I would condense the tutorial, maybe change that to where it's not nearly as long, because like you said, you spent 5 or 6 days just on the tutorial. I would try and condense all the tactics into, instead of you having to beat that entire level, just go over the strategies. Like, this is what you do in this situation. Now move this guy here, blow him up, do this, do that.
Like step by step, this is literally how you play it.
Not give you a whole ass
challenge
battle. not give you a whole battle and then give you the first little scenario as the tutorial, and then you're like, okay, now figure out everything else.
Right.
I would change that. I would change a couple of the battles, like the ones where you were saying, you get maybe 5 or 6 tanks into your opponent's like 12, or I would change that. I would change, there are certain little things, but all in all, I enjoy the challenge of this game. I do. I think that it makes you want to learn.
Keep coming back to it.
It makes you want to keep going.
Okay. I'm glad I asked you first. This is interesting. So, I did love this game. I've said a few times, I'm new, had never played a tactical game, turn-based or RPG or not. I really enjoyed it. When you finally push through a really tough battle and you finally get the W, it's very satisfying.
Yes.
It's addicting. I can play it for hours, and I did. I played it for many, many hours. Like I said, I spent probably 4, maybe 5 hours on one battle one night, dude. Mm-hmm. And I felt so good to finally take that out. There's many modes, which is cool. There's replay value there. Like, especially as a kid, I would have been putting a lot of time into this game. There's just all kinds of, like I said, you can buy extra maps from the campaign, and that's replay value right there.
Yeah.
And then we didn't even get into all the modes. Like, I literally did not get a chance to even play them all. So there's other things going on there. So that's what I like about it. I'm gonna give it an 8.
That's fair.
I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. I think after 1 week of playing, I would have landed higher. Where I land today, it's unfortunate. It suffered from us playing it another week because I got to a point where I got tired of playing it.
You got a little burnt out?
I got burnt out which is not what I thought was going to happen. I thought I was actually going to be stuck on this for weeks. Really, I was like, this is way addicting. I'm going to be stuck on this. But after a few days, man, I went to one of the other modes. I tried the war mode, or the battle, where I unlocked I went into the store, I just bought a map. I was just messing around with it. I bought a map, I went and played it. I did have fun with it. Dude, it's just too hard. It's just, it's fun for me for just a week or so, and then I just got tired of trying because it gets seriously difficult, and maybe it was just that. I'm not saying I wouldn't go back to it, and I probably would maybe go back to the campaign, but when you do one of those little side, just pick a map and go, man, I've restarted a few times, and I got tired of restarting. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to put this game down.
I get it.
And yeah, so
I get that.
It's a great, great game. I just feel like this game suffered from the AI being slightly too intelligent. It was tough, man.
I didn't get that. The struggle I had with AI is like, you're trying to draw them out, and then they're just staying back in the back, and you have to go to them.
Intelligent AI. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. You can't draw them out sometimes. And
now, for a final thought, I did want to say, I chose this game because I have a memory of it from childhood where my friend had this game, and I always was intrigued by it. I was always watching him play it at lunch or at recess, and I always wanted it. I asked my mom for it, never could either find it or it was always too expensive or whatever. I just never crossed the paths with it. But I love something drew me into it. Something made me want to always play that game. And like I said, around this time, I had played Final Fantasy Tactics. Had no idea that this was a tactics-based game. And I didn't know that they were anywhere close to being similar, if you could even call it that.
Right.
But if I had this game as a kid, I don't see myself liking it as much as I thought that I would because of how hard it was. I didn't realize that this game was that hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a difficult
One last thing I want to say about the difficulty, and I swear we'll shut up about it. They, in the final stretch of them putting this game out, the testers were just going to town on this game and trying to tweak it and really perfect the balance. And they were still in the middle of balancing it out, and they were like, guys, we got to get this game out. Like, it's done. So if there is a slight difficulty, that might be the result of that.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to say about it, what I would change is almost what you said, man. Tutorial is too tough and too long. And I know I sound like I'm whining here. I should not play a game for 5 days straight and still be on the tutorial.
Yeah.
Which I'd never even finished, might I add again, It just was like, okay. The way it would teach you is, instead of being like, okay, here's these units that you can use, here's how they work. They say, here's how these units work. We're going to give them to the enemy and give them multiple of that and give you some crappy terrain to work with. Yeah. They made it a challenge. Here's something else I would change. It's a very minor thing that I thought of going into it the first few days, where I had a hard time being like, some of those units looked the same. Like, you've got, your artillery and your rockets, and then there was another one that shot missiles. At first, it was hard to get to know the units. I think instead of making everything the exact same shade of orange or blue, they could have done like warm and cool colors, slightly lighter orange, or maybe a red, like a red and orange theme versus blue and green. I think that would be...
Yeah, no,
that would have been pretty cool, instead of having everything the same color. I'm like, it got a little... Like, I'm looking at all the same stuff. I'm like, what does this do? And you got the R button, but...
So what was our final scoring on that?
So you gave it a 9.5?
Yep.
Which is... that's a God tier.
Well...
Would you call this game God tier?
Honestly, no.
Okay, would you call it good or great?
I would call it great.
Great. Okay,
absolutely
so
great. I'd give it a 9.
Give it a 9?
I'd give it a 9. So you gave it an 8?
I gave it an 8, which would put it right in the middle of the 8.5. So I didn't really say this. I'm going to give a rating. Nakis is going to give a rating. And then we're going to find the average, or the mean of those two. And then we'll have a third, final NintenHeadZ rating. And then eventually, listeners, I would like to get a spreadsheet of this and have all of our games logged. And eventually, when I get my stuff together, I would like to have this viewable, and then we'll have it, color coded and all that. But that would be something in the works for sure. Let's conclude this episode, Nakis. Explain or describe this game in 3 words or less.
Awesome, difficult, and fun.
Okay.
I mean,
that's pretty spot on. I mean, It was awesome, it was difficult, and it was a lot of fun. Okay, I put Cartoon World War. Like, if I had to say... Okay.
So,
you were describing... I mean, it's kind of it's up in the air right now. We're figuring it out. I said explain or describe in 3 words. So, you weren't wrong.
Yeah.
You weren't wrong. I would say, Cartoon World War. That's what this game is. So, for now, we are done with Advanced Wars. We're going to set this one down. And it's time to randomize our next pool of games to choose from to play next week.
All right, Tens, I've randomized your games, and you've got Top Gear 3000, Return of the Ninja, and Cheetah Man 2.
Cheetah Man 2. Okay. That's not my answer, by the way. Yeah, we're going to go Top Gear 3000. I know a little bit about that series. I've played the first one. And I'm not the biggest racing game guy, but that is a pretty solid game. I don't think I've ever played 3000.
I don't think I've played any of them, but I do know that 3000 is supposed to be based like in outer space.
Yes.
So I'm kind of excited for that. That's a cool little twist on
Yeah.
a racing game.
So yeah, we'll definitely go with Top Gear 3000 for sure.
Sounds good.
So join us next week as we talk about Top Gear 3000. All right, listeners, thank you again for taking this journey with us. And Nakis, as always, thank you for being here to do this with me.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Absolutely. We also want to thank RushJet1 for our intro and outro music. We also want to thank our good friend Jared, who has volunteered, kind of stepped forward to help us out with our social media pages, which, Nakis, why don't you tell them about that real quick before we head out?
Yeah, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram, or send us an email at NintenHeadZ@gmail.com. We're all ears for any kind of constructive criticism.
Yeah, questions, comments, concerns, you want to throw rocks at us or agree with us or tell us how much you love us or hate us, yeah, you can do it there. So, all right, thanks, guys. I'm Tens.
I'm Nakis.
And we're out.
Peace.